Um, Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. And apologies for the slight delay. We had a slight technical hitch there, but Stephen is ready and waiting in the wings. Before I introduce him, I just wanted to thank everyone who subscribed to the YouTube channel during the week. That's very much appreciated. Thank you. And to everybody who watched my short film for the Soska Sisters Blood Drive, which is part of Women in Horror Month. Kirby Be a Hero. It's 180 views so far when I last checked, which is corking for a day and a half, because that went live yesterday morning. So please head over to Jen and Sylvia Soska's. I'll put a link below in the video so you can check it out. Obviously a very important cause, blood donation, and mine's, yeah, it's a little strange, my film, but what did you expect? Anyway, Stephen, hi there.
How you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you very much. Something's just dinged. Did that ding at your end or my end?
That was me. I think that was definitely me. I got to log out of something.
That's fine.
Okay, yeah, I think the dinging should be good.
Okay, cool. All right. As long as it's not me and it's nothing I have to do, that's absolutely fine.
And speaking of your short, I watched it myself. Very funny. Well done.
Thank you very much.
It's pretty cool.
Yes.
What technology do you use to? Did you do the animating?
Yes. I mean, basically, I had some 12-inch dolls.
Mm-hmm.
So I posed them and then photographed them and then applied a filter with an app called Super Photo.
Okay.
And then I think my friend Ashley Thorpe, who is a proper animator, was saying it's called an animatic.
Yeah,
that kind of style of thing. And it worked really well. But of course, and then I had to, but I wanted to make it look as much like a comic as possible. Right. So having got the dolls, then I had to go into each frame and take out all the joints and try and make them look a little bit more naturalistic, and put in, because obviously one character particularly has only got hands that are in that form. That's all he does. He's very, very good for holding things, but that's all he does. So I had to, so I used my iPad and a thing called Affinity Photo to, cut things out and copy and paste them and shade them. So every frame has got something manipulated on it, basically.
Yeah, that's cool.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was great fun to do. It was really great fun to do. It was like, yeah, I might do more of those in that style. We'll see.
It's funny. It allows for a lot of creative freedom in the writing, which was funny, and so I liked it and enjoyed it. Thanks for posting and putting it up.
Thank you. Well, as I say, it's on Jen and Sylvia Soska's The Twisted Twin YouTube. So please head over there. That's right, I've just clicked on something I wasn't supposed to click on. No, it's fine. I haven't lost it. I thought I'd lost something important. It's all right. Anyway, you're here. As I say, thank you very much indeed for joining me, Stephen. I actually got to watch Hell House LLC this morning.
Okay. It's good. It's a good morning watch.
It is. It's
like that, and like your Sunday news shows and Hell House LLC. That's what it's paired with. So
yeah, it's I really enjoyed it. It's for those of you who haven't seen it, spoiler alert, inevitably, I think that because we're going to be discussing both the first and the second film, we'll move on to the second film later on in the talk. There will be spoilers. I think it's inevitably there will be spoilers. But the first thing I wanted to ask about it is, how did this all begin? I mean, you wrote and directed it. When did you first have the idea for the script?
Actually, the initial idea about doing a horror movie, came from one of my investors, who's a cousin of mine, and he said, "I'll write you a check if you make a horror movie." So that's how it starts, right there. Filmmakers, we're like, wherever the money source comes from, that's what we'll do. So up until then, I'd been making short comedies. And so I never really, but I love horror movies. So I took it as a challenge and say, like, okay, well, I love the genre, but I've never actually written one. So In New York City, there's a haunted house attraction called I forget the actual name of it. Well, it was like, almost like 6-7 years ago. But you walk through and it's you have to sign like one of those releases, and one of the parts there's a chained up girl in one of the scenes, and so I took that, I captured that from it, so I made sure we had a chained up girl in our haunt for Hell House. But the basic premise came from like, what if something went wrong in a haunted house? How would you know? Because that part of the show is people screaming and being scared, and so I thought like it would be interesting to see that dynamic. Like, well, something is wrong, but not everyone knows it yet. It is that slow dawning of, oh, this is actually real. I thought it'd be a fun thing to do. So, but I wanted to present it more as like a documentary. I love shows like I don't know if you know over in the UK, like 60 Minutes. It's like a news
panorama. We have news night, and
presented. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You froze there for a second.
We both froze, I think. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, we have documentary. We have regular news. Well, we have
so it's like a murder mystery like that, and so we approach what happened that night through that style of investigative, almost like investigative journalism, trying to piece together the evidence, and that's the way I wanted to present it. And then because my first draft of the script was like straight narrative, not found footage, and it was just your basic 3-act structure, no mystery. I didn't really like it, and people I showed it to didn't really like it either, and they were blunt about it. So I thought we needed, which is good. I thought we needed like another draw to it, and I thought like making a mystery about what happened on opening night, and only having a YouTube video, which actually came from something real as well. There's a tragedy that happened back in like 2004, where a bunch of people were trying to get out of a place and they couldn't because it was bottlenecked exits and everything, and someone caught the entire event on their camera from start to finish. And so they uploaded that to YouTube, and that's what existed for investigators to kind of piece together what happened during this tragedy. So I took that concept of reality and put it to a haunted house setting,
right?
Because that chaos is still real. And then when people get bottlenecked, trying to get everyone, it's almost like as if a fire. And that's what I told a lot of the actors during that scene in the YouTube scene. It's just act as if there's a fire, and that's what you're running from, because you don't really know what you're running from. And so so it's just kind of pinning together a lot of different genres. I like the horror genre, the mystery of like the documentary news style approach to things, and then came and that makes a found footage horror film. A popular subgenre that some people like, some people hate, but I personally love. I know you have feelings towards it. So.
Well, because when we were talking earlier on, I was saying I have difficulty. No, I didn't get motion sickness because it's not constant. You get breaks from it.
Yeah.
And as you say, because you're constant. And I think this is one of the things I really admired about it, was the way that you cut. The way you tell the story is, as you say, is because documentary. So allows you to cut away from the found footage stuff to give the audience a bit of a break.
It's really seen as a break. And I know for people who don't like the shaky footage, that those breaks, they're important for your senses, as well as just adding a little subtext, a little bit, introducing more mystery to what you're seeing in the found footage version of the film, the found footage parts of the film. The documentary breaks really give you a physical break, and also allowed us to add more to pad the mystery of what's happening in the found footage side. So.
Yeah, no, it works extremely effectively. Okay, so basically your cousin said, okay, I'll write you a check if you make a horror movie. Yeah. When was that? How long ago was that?
That was in 2011, and from 2011 to 2013, I spent writing the script, and it's 2 years. And you'd say like, well, it shouldn't take 2 years to write a 90-minute found footage horror film, but because obviously it's nothing too complex. But what the most time spent on writing it? Well, I was working full-time job in New York City at the time, so I was writing 5 a.m. every morning, heading on the subway at 7:30 a.m. You know, so I only had little pockets to write, and I can't write at night because I get home from work, I go to bed. So I'm fresh in the morning, so that was when I spent writing. So it took a while then, but it's just perfecting the scares and trying to avoid cliches as much as possible. And I would send this to someone, and I'd say, you know, take a look at this, and they'd be like, yeah. And I'd be like, okay, I'll rework it. And so it's just like really perfecting the scares, trying to make sure that we weren't doing just, you know, what's been done before. And you know, you're never going to completely avoid that. I mean, everyone's going to say something's derivative from somewhere, but so perfecting the storyline, perfecting the scares, and then so I finished the draft, my final draft in like late 2013. Just started casting December, January into 2014, and then we just turned around and shot immediately in the spring of 2014, May of 2014, after I had found the haunted house that we needed to shoot in, which was I knew was going to be the biggest hurdle to climb for production wise, was going to be find the shooting location. So once we were able to line that all up, then we just we spent 10 days out of the location and just and shot. And you know,
so you shot it in 10 days.
Shot in 10 days, yeah. 12 days if you can count. We did some pickups in back in New York City for the interviews.
Right.
Because obviously we wanted them to be in a separate place altogether, not out at the place where the haunted house is. We shot most like the news, the Sarah Havel interview, which opens the documentary side of the film. She was in New York. The journalist, he was in New York, and a few other of the interviews, they were all in New York. So added like 2 or 3 more days onto the 10 days, and that's what we got. But we spent about 10 days out at the haunted house, which is a real haunted house attraction out in Pennsylvania.
I was going to ask you about that. Okay, so it's a real haunted house.
Exactly. So that saved us so much time and headaches, because once I wrote it, I thought I had to find. It was written for an abandoned house that the company Hell House took over the abandoned house and made their haunt in this abandoned house. And then I thought, like, okay, now I have to find an abandoned house, try to make sure it's A, safe, B, get permission to film in there, and then then set it up to be like a haunted house attraction. Like that means getting electricity and all that stuff. And then the thought occurred to me, and it's just one of those moments like, why hadn't I been doing this the whole time? Search for real haunted house attractions that, that have that abandoned look to them, but are already set up to be, they can take care of both locations, the haunt abandoned and the haunt when it's in season, like the opening night at Hell House. So we found this perfect location, and it's an old hotel. And that required me to change the script a little bit to fit it. That's a hotel and not a house. And then, which worked out perfectly. And then, and so it has already had this like really decrepit, abandoned vibe to it. So then we had to make that hotel have 3 different setups. One was abandoned since it's closed in the 80s to when Hell House comes upon it in 2009. Then the haunted look, which is the second look, where it's all set up, all the lights and the monsters that were. And then the third look is abandoned after the tragedy there, 5 years later. So it had to have 3 different looks to it. And Angie Moyer, the person that owns the haunt, she was our set designer too. And she was phenomenal, her and her team like really selling that look for us that we can have it. Finding that haunt was just amazing. Like we lucked out.
Yeah. It makes so much sense once you think of it. But yeah. Well, I want to rewind a little bit to the writing. Incidentally, Collins and Cameron, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, I've got their names right. I have got your questions. I will ask them later on, but I've just got one as we're talking about the beginning of just spoken a little bit about writing, etc. This comes from Kim Lehman. Stephen, Wes Craven said A Nightmare on Elm Street came about from his nightmares. Have any of your nightmares inspired you in your writing or directing?
No. Like nightmares, when I wake up, I forget them by noon. I go to tell my wife they're like a really bad nightmare. I'm like, oh, I got to tell you about the scary dream I had. And I completely forgot it. I don't know. They're in and out of my mind. For me, the writing came from what I wanted to do was all subtlety. And that was just the theme I had from writing through production, through editing. Make sure everything is subtle. I didn't want to do like any big jump scares, anything elaborate with CGI at all. That was my goal, was just to keep everything kind of subtle and like creepy, not like necessarily, I don't want to like, it wasn't a feeling of want to terrify you. I wanted to make you uncomfortable and creeped out more. So that means things in the background, you know, analyzing a picture, like, you know, like you see those pictures on the internet, like haunted history, like, is this picture real? Like, if you look deep in the background, was that really there? Like, those haunted photos or something. And like, I love things like that. It's just something you look at and you analyze and you get a sudden, like the chills, and like, oh, they like it more so than someone jumping out and going, boo. Yeah. That's the style I liked. And that's when I approached the writing of it. It was more with that in mind, just keeping everything subtle and realistic as possible, as realistic as you can when you're dealing with paranormal stuff. But obviously there's nothing realistic about it, but trying to make it as real as possible. And I think in shooting it found footage in documentary style helps the realism, because when it comes to horror, the more real it feels, the scarier it is. So that's why I think a lot of the Hollywood horror films the last few years, you know, they add a lot of CGI and then it takes you right out of it, and it doesn't, then you lose that feeling of being real. I think in the last year, I've seen a lot of studio horror movies that they seem to have corrected this, and they've been fantastic. I love them. Like thinking like the new It, for instance, like, is amazing. But it used to, they just overdo it with the production so much that it was too much of a Hollywood movie. Therefore, there's nothing real about it. Therefore, there's nothing really scary about it. So if you do everything kind of looking raw, very much like you're seeing real footage, real news footage, real amateur shot footage of a ghost, I think that feeling of creepiness comes in a lot easier. So that was the goal from the writing standpoint.
Yeah, and definitely in watching the film, that's the word creepy is the word that I kept on coming up with. That. And it's like, one of the things, again, which I admired and really enjoyed about the film is that I mentioned my friend Ashley Thorpe earlier on. I worked on his film Borley Rectory, which has a lot, which is about a haunted house. And you spend a long time just looking at the images on the screen, trying to work out what it is you're actually looking at. Can you see something in the corner? I really admired some, you know, those very subtle tricks of the pan across, and then something isn't quite the way it was when you swing back again, and it's happening just at the corner of your eye.
Nothing too overt. I love that. And that's my favorite kind of scares in films, are the ones that do that. Like, did I see that? I don't know. And like, I love when I have to rewind a horror film to say, did I just see what I thought I saw? And that's the best kind of horror film.
Yeah. And I think it invites the audience in, because if it's too much in your face, then you're going to do that. But if you're trying to, then actually you're physically going to be staring more into the screen. So in terms of a couple of practical things I was curious about, what equipment did you film on?
I'm terrible with equipment. We shot on 5 different cameras for Hell House. The main camera that Paul, the guy's doing most of the found footage videoing, Paul, the character, the Hell House character, he shot on a Sony PMW 300, which is a standard HD, 1080p, 24p camera. Right. And so we use higher end DSLRs for the documentary interviews. Right. Gives a nice shallow depth of field look, and more to the documentary style. And then use some GoPros, and I have my little handy cam that I use to audition actors. I take with me everywhere. It's just a little tiny 1080p camera. I always have someone holding that, just to recording at all times, and you never know if it's picked up something that we can use. And there's a lot of the improv, there's a right in the middle of the film, right when we're going from acts 1 to 2, I gave the actors like half a day to take like 2 cameras and just do a lot of improv, and they shot hours and hours of improv, and I had to watch it all. But I pulled like, about like, I would say maybe like 90 seconds worth of material out of that to use, and just to get the actors kind of like interacting, playing around the house, like with that the Paul saying a lot of funny things like the roof's leaky, Tony's gonna have to fix the leaky roofs, and the roof was leaking that day, and he just filmed it. It made for some good transitional action to get it to move us into the second act when our first scares come in. So and that was and just using some small like consumer camcorders for that. But then the brunt of the action was filmed, but with the Sony PMW, if I remember right.
Right. Yeah. Now I was curious because there is obviously, as you say, it is handheld. Therefore, having huge, great big cameras can be a problem if you're trying to do.
Yeah, it's a heavier camera, the PMW, and I don't really personally like it, but it made for a good image. We used different cameras in Hell House too, but for the purposes of what we needed it for, it worked out well. Yeah, I wish Paul had something a little lighter, because I know he was struggling a lot with the heft of it. But he's a pro, so he didn't mind. So I call as Gore Abrams, the actor Gore Abrams that plays him. I always call him by the character. So.
Hey, you remember a name? That's fine. Yeah. Again, one of the other. It looks like a very big budget movie. It feels like a big budget movie. So I was curious, but I'm assuming this is an indie feature. And you actually had really quite a small crew.
Yeah, we had,
looking at the credits. It's not that there are not that many people involved apart from the actors.
There's crew positions you need. Like you can't do without no matter how small your budget are. And then so we made sure we had like key departments filled. But yeah, no, we kept it as small as possible. As you said, it's very small budget. So a lot of money. Everyone who worked on it, both crew and talent, were from New York. So just the money going into transport everyone out of New York City, getting them into rural Pennsylvania, you're putting them up for 10 days there and shooting at the haunted house. That eats into the budget a lot too. But we had so we just made sure it was pretty skeleton, but we had whatever crew we did have in the key departments were very good at top at their job, so just makeup, media management, director of photography, like everyone was very good at what they did. So. Yeah,
well, that really shows. Curious, you had quite a few people working on sound.
Yeah, just because we filmed in different locations, so we had and there are different days, and so for the so not all the sound mixers on set sound mixers we hired were available for each different series of the shoot. So we had to bring in different for the haunted house, we had one mixer there. For a series of interviews in New York City, we had one sound person for that, and then I had to get a third for some final pickups. With the last things we shot, actually, the very last things we shot, which were pickups, which weren't ever scheduled. But once I started looking at the footage, I said we need more interviews. Because we dropped an interview, we picked up an interview, and we were still kind of like, this is a documentary where we don't have enough subjects to talk to, and so we shot very late in the game. The bearded author. Theodore Belucas and then Miranda Robbins. She's a great actress I had known. We had auditioned her earlier, and she came in as a witness. She was in the crowd that night, and then so they kind of filled out our interview subjects, and and so we shot that at a later date, and that required a third sound person to come in because scheduling conflicts. Sound guys are always bouncing around on projects, so they're never available when I want them. So.
Are terribly important. Where do you get the fight? I say it feels like a decent sized budget movie, and one of the reasons is that wonderful scene where you have the police and the fire trucks turning up. How did you organize all that? Was this just the local fire department, or?
That was so many things happened that were just like, I can't believe we got so lucky. And one of them was the person who owns the haunted attraction out there in Pennsylvania. She knows so many people in town, and she has so many hookups, and because she owns a lot of businesses, and one of them being the haunted house. So she put out a Facebook post just asking anyone who wants to be an extra, and she got a lot of people responding to that, and they came out the day of. Just the people in the town of Lehighton, Pennsylvania came out, and they were amazing because it was raining that day. Great visually because the wet pavement and everything with the lights reflecting off of it was great than if it were dry pavement. So loved it visually, but as either an extra or anybody that was outside that day, the rain is not ideal. So, but they hung out all day and all night, and she asked some of the local fire crew if they'll come by, and I said, like, we'll just need you just to, run your lights when we give you a signal. Come blaring in with your fire engine, and and obviously when you have all these moving parts, all these different groups of people that were coordinated by by my producer Joe Bendelli and assistant director did a great job of doing the organization, putting people into groups and saying, you're moving at this time, you're moving at that time. And I was actually the one holding the camera the whole time for the walkthrough, because I thought it was a very dangerous job to be walking around holding the camera and like running in the dark with it. So I just thought, if anyone's going to get injured on this, it's got to be me. No one else is allowed to get injured. So, and then we were running through the house, and we get outside, we have a horn that goes off, and that signals the fire department to come in. And the timing was off so many times. We're like, how the fire truck pulls up just as we're running up there, and they were great to do like 5 takes with us.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and thank God there wasn't a fire in town. They didn't get called away ever, but they did 5 takes, and we finally we nailed the timing. It took really like all day. So what we did is we got there early in the morning to start walking through it, just with a small group, a small crew, and just walking through each step, what needed to happen. And the thing that's tricky about that scene is that we had to film it from 2 different perspectives. One being the perspective of the tour goers, and then at the end of the film, we see that whole thing all over again from the Hell House's perspective. So we had to make sure the cameras are positioned right for that. Doing all the run-throughs of it from 2 different perspectives, though. And it was just setting up and practicing and rehearsing all day. And then finally, when night fell, we just start doing take after take after take, running through and just doing it and over again. And the actors, they're unpaid, and they're just pizza, but they're having fun, and they loved it, and they did an amazing job, just screaming and yelling and running around pretending like the place is on fire. So it turned out great, and I'm indebted to the people of that town forever.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I think that's one of the things that really helps. Production value.
It does. I knew if we didn't have that, it wouldn't have really sold the chaos as well. If we didn't have as many extras as we did, if we didn't have fire trucks and the paramedics and everything, then it wouldn't feel real. So I knew we needed that, and thankfully Angie was able to come through and secure some of that stuff for us. So
right. Cool. All right. So first question that we had emailed in is from Collins. Hello. And again, spoiler alert. I was wondering who the girl in Paul's room was. Was she completely new at that moment, or were we supposed to know who she was? My favorite scare in the film. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So that's what people call the Paul under the blankets scare.
Genius.
Yeah. And so, whether or not you believe that a grown man would go under his blankets or not is a bit controversial, but I think he would. And when someone asked me that when we were shooting that, they're like, well, why would he just go under his blanket? I'm like, well, why would you run for the door? She's sitting right at the door. You're not going to run to the door. That's where she is. Yeah, so she is actually a character that's referred to early on the documentary side. In one of the interviews, the writer is asked about the hotel's history. It might actually be in the middle of the film, but there's a bit of the Andrew Tolley, the owner of the hotel, that committed suicide, and what happened when guests started disappearing. And he had referenced one of the first guests that disappeared was a woman and her daughter.
Yes.
That disappeared. And so the woman is actually one of the first scares we have, and it's one of the subtle, smaller scares of the film. And it's just when a silhouette walks into Paul's room behind him while he's dressed doing his confessional, and then she walks out, and it's just, you know, like he thinks it's Sarah. He's like, that was weird. You know, not thinking anything of it at the time. That's was supposed to be the woman, and her daughter is someone that we see later, obviously, in Paul's room. We also see reference of it too when they're down in the basement, when they first get to the hotel and they're exploring the basement. And Paul's digging through all these random items that are on the ground. You know, there's Bibles, and one of them is a suitcase and a woman's shoe. That's supposed to reference to the woman who disappeared. You know, an old woman's shoe, and then there's also spikes down there. But I think that's like very, very, like, you would need like a microscope to pick that one up. Right. But so yeah, so she's just referenced in the documentary side as one of the guests who disappeared. The little girl is. So
yeah. I thank you for asking the question, Collins, because I kind of thought I knew who it was, but yeah, you've absolutely answered the question. And as I say, I was telling Craig, my husband, about this. He doesn't watch horror movies, but I was so excited after having watched it. I was like, this is what happened. This is what, and he hid under the sheet. And Craig said, because that's what you do as a kid. If there's something, because I think it is instinctive, is like, that's what you do, because if it doesn't grab it off you, then you assume it's gone.
Exactly.
And there's that moment, and it's like, yeah, you spend a while.
You keep on peeking, like if you peek, you'll hope to see that it's gone. It's just like close your eyes. It's like being an ostrich. It's, you know, it's just hiding from it, and just assuming that the terror's gone away because I can't see it. Yeah. And what I loved about that scare, I was really excited to shoot it though, is because it gets worse for Paul as it goes on. Like, first he sees her and she's looking away from him, and he goes under the blanket and he's like, okay, I'm going to peek out. And he's in his head, you know, his inner monologue is definitely like, she's not there anymore. She's not there anymore. Peeks out. Not only is she there, now she's looking directly at him. Yeah. One thing that's actually a fun thing about that scene on the production side is there was a very, I'm sure you know this on sets too, sometimes there's just happy accidents that happen. Mm-hmm. Things you didn't intend in the production, but like when you see it later, you're like, wow, we didn't intend that to happen, but the way we caught it on camera, it looks perfect. I'm keeping it. And that's when the next time he peeks his head out of the blanket, she's not only staring at him, she moves to get up. And then that's all you see. And so for me, I love that, because then it's like, whoa, she just get up. Where is she? Now she could be walking. She could be anywhere. She could be like coming right at me. And that was not by design. She was, we were just cutting to her close up at that point. So I told her, when Paul picked up the blanket and was looking out at her, the actress that play the little girl, her name's Bailey Moyer. She's the owner of the haunt's daughter, who was so excited to shoot that because she got to get out of school that day to shoot that scene. And she loved that. So I said, right when Paul points the camera out, I said, Bailey, will you move up for the next shot? We're going to get you closer. And she stood up, and Paul brought the blanket down. And it just, if you don't hear me say that, you take on me giving her direction. And it just looks like she just got up and it was like walking towards Paul. So I just thought, like, wow, that wasn't part of the plan, but it looks great. So I kept that scene in there. That shot specifically of her getting up right as Paul brings down the blanket over the camera again. I thought that looked good.
That looks very good.
Thank you.
And also, it's the fact that you managed to. Did you have to audition sheets to get it right? Because you get the lights.
It was a months-long process of sheet auditions, you know, and then you had to deal with the sheet union, which is one of the toughest unions in the world. Oh my God, the demands.
This is a great sheet. It works incredibly well. I think
that's the thing. I mean, we did have a good sheet, so it was worth the hassle. No, there was some of the sheets. Again, there was this Angie on set design just brought a bunch of options around, and the director of photography, Brian Harnick, on the film. He recommended for the scene itself and for the scene before that, where the silhouette walks into the room, that the room be painted. So that was one thing she had to Angie and her team had to do was completely paint the room to a darker shade because it worked better for the silhouette and the contrast and of the subjects on the wall and everything like that. So yeah, that was one thing we did. We changed the room. The biggest thing we changed in the physical room itself within the haunted house was the wall paint. We just did a full painting of it. So, and yeah, I think it worked out fine. That's what a good DP does, is recognize things like that. It's going to show up better if the wall's a different color. And I'm like, oh, Angie, do you guys mind painting?
That's a really useful trick. That's a really useful tip as well. It's just like, yeah, it's the contrast and the yeah. That's very interesting. Okay, so that's that is Hell House LLC, and I believe that now it's available on Amazon Prime at the moment, which is what
both in UK and US and Canada.
Yeah, and that's the version I was watching. I watched the version on Prime, but you've actually got a director's cut available at the moment. Is that right?
That's right. We had so much extra footage that went into my original cut. My original cut was like 97, 98 minutes, and we never were able to really finish the effects work in the basement because we just didn't have enough money. So when at the end, there's a basement shot where we're supposed to see more of what happened to the tour goers and Melissa, who's chained up in the basement. But we shot green screen for effects, and then we shot a safety scene in case we never finished the effects of no effects at all. And that's what was in the final version of the film. But I hooked up with a visual graphics artist, and they finished the green screen for us, and we put that and a few other scenes that I cut out of the release version back into the director's cut. It was my original cut of the film, not cut down to what audiences are supposed to enjoy more. They like a 90-minute movie. Don't go over that. That's what I'm told. So I try to cut it down closer to 90 minutes. That was the.
Well, I think in your notes, I was going over your notes, you were saying that you get more character development in the director's cut version. Yeah,
because there's more interaction with the Hell House group in the director's cut. Just interaction between them, getting a little bit more of who they are, who a little bit more depth of them too, as much as we can within the found footage world. Which is one thing I hate about the found footage world is coverage of a scene. No coverage, I hate that. But so we a few more scares too. There's a couple of scares that I thought were okay, but they didn't work out either for pacing reasons or they were just maybe a little too much like another scare we had in the film, so they got cut out. So I just put it all into the director's cut. One scare I did like a lot, and I'm not sure why I kept it out of the final cut, but it might have been for a time issue. What was the Google Streetview scene, and I put that scene, actually it's on our Facebook page in full. You could see it. It's not just on the DVD, but that is where the Google Street View of the hotel ever since the incident at Hell House. You will always see Alex Taylor, the owner of Hell House, out on the balcony on the Google Street View. No matter how many times Google comes through and does the Street View again, he's always there. It's just like things like that's kind of scares I love. It's just like creepy to think about. But that was one of the deleted scare scenes in the film.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. But yes, that means yeah. I'm getting goosebumps now. Okay, so moving on to the sequel, Hell House 2, the Abaddon Hotel. What was your, and you've got some, and we're going to share some stills in a few moments. What was your biggest challenge in approaching a sequel?
I think the challenge of any found footage horror movie itself is trying to be not just rehash everything you did in the original. And I just know that, and just reading a lot from reviewers of other films, that people generally don't like sequels to horror films, especially found footage horror films. So the challenge was really making sure that what we did was unique in itself, away from the original, not just rehashing the same scares and the same which is tough to do in itself, just because we're pretty much in the same location. for that. But the story came just, it was really quick writing because I'd always had the story in me ever since I wrote the original Hell House. I had to take a lot out of the original Hell House story because when you switch to found footage, there's a lot of narrative things you can't do. So a lot of the backstory to the Abaddon Hotel I couldn't put in, and that came in. So that flowed into the sequel, and that came pretty easily. Writing the story for that. So the challenge was making sure that the scares themselves are the kind of scares that I like, the good, subtle scares, but also making sure that they're good, independent on their own, and not relying on rehashing anything from Hell House. They're new, I guess, is the biggest challenge. And I think we did a good job in that. We have a great cast who really sell the scares well. So. So yeah, I think that the challenge is the scares, making sure that, 'cause being in the same environment doing new scares is tough. So
it's literally, I mean, we have got some, let me just bring these up and bear with me, folks, whilst I just talk amongst yourselves for 2 seconds whilst I click on the relevant bits on my.
What are those nice pictures?
Yeah, what are these nice pictures? So there's that window there, start screen share, and let me just focus on one of these pictures. Come on, I want you to be big. just there we are. Hopefully you can see 3 people standing beside a car.
Would I be able to see them? Because I can't see.
Oh, can you not? Okay.
Let's just tell them about it. There's 3 people standing by a car.
There's 3 people standing by a car.
Hey.
I may have hit the wrong button again.
Is it a used car or is it a new car?
Yeah. Start screen share and present to everyone. I am screen sharing, present to everyone. And I'm going to click on this and I'm going to. So can you see it now?
I can't. You
can't. Okay. Craig will probably tell me.
Supposed to be able to.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't appear to be wanting to play, folks. Craig's saying something downstairs, but I can't hear him. So we've got 3 people standing beside a car.
Yeah,
we'll put them up on the website.
You saw a small version of it, and that's 3 of our 4 main actors in this one. So yeah, I'd mentioned that there's a lot of the filming takes place in the same location. A lot of it takes place in other locations as well, but at different times though. So in this film, we'll get a little bit more of the history of when the Abaddon Hotel opened. So we'll be back in the Abaddon back in the 80s, as well as current and future as well. So it's same location spanning some time. As well as other locations, but the brunt of the story is I mean the movie is called the Abaddon Hotel, so it goes to figure that most of the movie will be in the Abaddon Hotel. So it's like the movie Titanic would be really disappointing if it was on a different boat. So
yeah.
And the only reason I use that as a reference because that's what's in my background is a picture of the Titanic. So
I'm going to try one more. I'm going to try and screen share one more thing. Let's just start screen share.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I see one.
Right, cool. It was because I was trying to screen share 4 images at the same time. Now, for anyone who has seen, we'll try not to. Let's see if we can get away without doing too much of a spoiler. Room 2C has a great significance in the first movie. Who are the actors that I'm looking at on this one?
Okay, the guy is Vasily Flutor, and on the right is Jillian Gertz, and on the left is Joy Schatz. Everyone is New York actors who we auditioned, and just could not ask for better actors. It's just one of those things. You get lucky on certain things. When you get lucky on acting, it's the editing process. I guess the editing process makes it both tricky and easier. Easier that I don't have to how am I going to edit around this performance? But when the acting's so good, like it was with these guys, is that it makes every take like I want to use a piece of every take, and I'm like, I can't decide because, oh, I like it this, and but I like this, and so that's the challenge too, when you have just amazing actors like we did in this one. Person holding the camera is a guy named Dustin Austin. He shows up in front of the camera, but he does the majority of the found footage camera holding in this one, so you can't see him there.
Right. So hopefully I'm just sharing somebody else sitting at a table.
That is the dining room of the Abaddon Hotel. Some people will probably recognize that. And there's things going on in the dining room. I have no idea what's going on there. But
we've got an actor. That's fine.
Yeah, I know. I just don't know what to say without
without actually.
Nothing much I can say about that. So
that's okay. That's fair enough. So how long did you?
He had dinner and he left, and nothing ever came of it. And he enjoyed his meal on this day.
What? How long did it take to film the sequel?
I think it's same deal. We were out there for 10 days at the Abaddon Hotel. So that's I always tell people, found footage on production side is a curse and a blessing. It's a blessing because you can cover so much pages of script in a day because your camera setup is one.
Right.
But the bad part of that is it's so tricky to cover a scene when you have one angle to cover it from. So you have to make sure you get everything across, all your dialogue and the feeling and everything you want to get across in the scene has to come through in just one look. And there's so many times when I'm filming, I'm like, why can't I just do a reverse angle now? Why can't we, because it's found footage. They don't do setups. So it makes it challenging in that sense. So you have to get everything across in one camera angle. I love it for being able to shoot 90 pages in 10 days, but I hate it for the lack of coverage it gives us. But at the end of the day, I love it I love it for the medium itself. It's just it's a great way to tell horror because it makes it feel authentic and real. So I'm not complaining, but 10 days for better or worse.
Right. We had Cameron Greer emailed me a question, and Kim Lehman has asked a similar question this evening. That's basically about the Abaddon Hotel, the sequel. Will you be putting the first part of the question is, will you be putting it into festivals?
No, I don't think so. It really depends on when we release it. I guess the timing of that, it depends. With everything I've made before, with Hell House included in all my shorts, I love putting them into festivals. Love going to festivals. Hell House was in a few festivals, a lot of fun festivals. One of them being the Telluride Horror Fest, which is so much fun. So many great horror films there. I would love to do that over again, but I think we're going to skip the process on this one just because it's a sequel and not an original. And if it were an original movie, not a sequel to something, I probably would go the festival route. So I'll probably, I don't know yet, but my feeling is that we'll skip the festival process this time around on this one.
Right. Okay. And the follow-up to that question is from Cameron. Will it be going straight to Prime Video, or will you give it a Blu-ray release?
It will be released VOD, video on demand outlets like iTunes and Amazon. I'm not sure about Prime just yet. Amazon is very tricky. Jeff Bezos has got some tricks up his sleeve for independent filmmakers who put their movies on Prime. So
yes, stuff changed recently, particularly.
Yeah, stuff changed recently. So it's a little tougher for low budget films. But so I don't really know our projection. It's going to be available on for sure for rent on iTunes and Amazon for sure. And the DVD release, Blu-ray, I don't know. I wish we could have released a Blu-ray for Hell House and not just a standard DVD. I know a lot of people had asked that question. You know, why DVD? Why not? Why no Blu-ray? And basically, you know, we're just a very small operation. When you go Blu-ray, that just increase your costs so much, and it's a bigger, tougher thing to do, and it's very easy for a studio to do, very tough for to do when you're just a small operation. But we hope to be able to do eventually after the VOD release a Blu-ray, if we can do that Blu-ray of the film. Doing the same thing we did this one, a director's cut of it, more of the behind the scenes look and stuff like that, like we did for the Hell House. Whether or not it's going to be Blu-ray or DVD, I don't know yet. But that will be after the VOD release.
Right. Okay. So, what sort of timescales are you looking at for Hell House 2?
I don't know.
You should be doing post-production, not talking to me.
Yeah, no, I know. So, I mean, my cut is near completion, but there's other elements that have to go into it, like effects have to be done. There are a few more effects in this one, visual effects. There were in this film than were in the original. And then there's then the sound mixing processes go on in color and all that go on at the same time. Once I finish my cut, which I have told a lot of people will happen sometime in March, then it goes off to mixing and color and the effects get finished and come in and all that. So, and then once that's all done, I mean, if it were up to me, I would just be like, boom, here it is, but it's not up to me, and I don't really know what the process is going to be after that. So, I can't say. I would love for it to come out as soon as possible after that. But it's a whole process that goes on when you're delivering a film to platforms and all that. So,
right. So when you say your cut, so you're editing as well?
Yeah, I do the edits on this. Especially on a film like this, which is shot more as a documentary, I kind of feel like the editing process is the last draft of the script. Mm-hmm. So I kind of feel as the writer, I have to edit it too, because then there's things that I'll pick up as the writer that I'll know will make sense if I swap this in here or take that scene out, or something improvisational works great here. And I feel like that's something that only the person who knows the story as intimately as I do inside out would know as they're going through the footage, rather than a third-party editor. And that's kind of how documentaries go. If real documentaries go, is cataloging footage and kind of like making a story from the raw footage and writing. And that's where the writing process comes in, is from the editing of a doc. So I kind of treat it as a real doc in that sense, where I kind of feel like that is my last draft of the script, is my edit. So I'm very hands-on in that. I think at some point, if hopefully I'd like to do a standard narrative, non-found footage film. I think then when you're dealing with a lot of coverage and straight script, then I would probably trust a third-party editor. But right now I'm kind of very like, I got it, so. Yeah, that's how I feel about that. It's time consuming, but I love it. I love it. So
right.
Yeah.
And it worked incredibly well on the first one. So
yeah, I edited that on Final Cut Pro 7, which has been discontinued, and then I finished it because it got discontinued during my edit. And when I updated my OS X, that was like the one thing you'd never do as an editor: never update your operating system in the middle of an edit. Like, everyone knows that. I never got that note, but everyone else seemed to have known that. So then, like, I couldn't use 7 anymore, and then I had to switch to 10. So I finished it in 10. But on this on the Abaddon Hotel, I'm using Adobe Premiere. Are you familiar with Premiere? Or do you do any editing?
Final Cut 10.
Final Cut 10, yeah. I like its interface. I think it's a fantastic. I just like the cutting style of 7 more so than 10, and so I don't like the magnetic timeline. And sorry, this is nerd talk. But Premiere has more of that old traditional layout of the editing systems, the software that I'm used to. So I went with Premiere. Where 10 is nothing against 10. I used it to finish Hell House. So.
Yeah, oh, yeah, no, trust me, I've gone through everything. I've used, started with iMovie. I've done quite a lot in DaVinci Resolve,
Uh-huh.
because the editing, and it is exactly you say, that there's no magnetic timeline. So it's like, okay, I don't know what's happening there. I just want to move that clip
I
there,
know.
and it's just like, and you can do it in 10. It is possible.
You can, yeah, but it just
But
doesn't.
it's
Different.
non-intuitive. It's
Yeah.
when you're trying to work rapidly. Yeah, yes, complete nerd.
But
Editing.
but 10 has got great tools. Like color correction within 10 is actually, I think, is very, very useful, more so than a lot of editing. So I don't think you need to go to a third-party application for color correction within 10. I think they do. I think in the latest update of 10, they did a great job. But anyways, this again,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, no, funnily enough, I had to do some color, although I was manipulating images on
Uh-huh.
the short film. I had to do some color correction in 10. I was like, oh, okay, all right, I can balance that out so it looks a little bit similar. And kind of refine stuff and so on in 10. It's like, oh yeah, okay, that's very cool. Yeah, that's good. Cool.
Right.
Okay, so once you finish this, once you finish Hell House 2, there's obviously a lot to be done. What else are you working on, or anything else on the...
Well, I have 2 scripts. I got I have Hell House 3 is the final chapter of this. The storyline for Hell House is in 3 movies. I planned 3 movies, so I don't, whether or not I'll be able to shoot the 3rd movie, I don't know. We'll see. But it's called Lake of Fire, Hell House Chapter 3, and so we'll see on that. But that again, it would be found footage documentary. I have another feature I wrote in 2012, dying to make, but it's just it's a grander budget. So, and it's a standard narrative horror film. It's called The Church. And so, just have to see and wait. I don't know. So I have scripts. Whether or not they'll get made, we'll see. But right now, all I got is the Abaddon Hotel, and my cut is looking good. We're excited about it. We have an incredible cast. I cannot tell you how great these actors are. And that makes everything in a horror film. Believing those reactions, believing those people, adds another layer to that believable style that we're shooting in. So,
you mentioned the cast, but I have to say, shout out to the cast on Hell House LLC, particularly. I mean, the guy playing the photographer. Forgive me, I can't remember his name. The actor playing the photographer. It's like, this is how to convey emotion, and this is just a headshot, and that's all you're giving him. He's talking to somebody off camera, and I'm getting creeps. Just remembering it now, I'm getting goosebumps. Just because it's like, conveying that story was just great.
Or it was amazing, and they're all were. I love working on that cast. I was going to say something that I gotta keep a zip lip on. But I loved working with that cast. They're a great group. They bonded on that shoot. They're all still friends, and I hear from them a lot as well. And just a great group. Again, just very lucky to have done that. Me and a few other people, we did the auditions in New York, and just being in New York City, I think, gives you a good pool of actors to choose from. Mm-hmm. So we got lucky getting these guys, them agreeing to come work on this, found footage film out in Pennsylvania with us. So that was great. It was great to have them. Great to have this new cast. We're doing well on actors, right?
You're doing very well. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna make this the last question, which has literally just come in from Kim. Hi, Kim. By the way, forgot to say hi.
Yeah.
Would you consider using Kickstarter for Hell House 3 as a way of financing?
I don't know. I don't know anything about that. What they call it? Is that crowdfunding? Is that what's called crowdfunding? I don't know anything about it. I don't know. I would love to say yes or no instead of a vague answer of maybe. But
maybe it's a definite answer.
I don't know anything about Kickstarter. Have you ever worked with crowdfunding at all?
Yeah, I did 2 short films last year. And basically it's a way of giving up your life for at least 2 to 3 months of literally just worrying about and just it is an art. Yeah. So I mean, rather than just trying to find half a dozen backers, you may need to find 200 or 300 back. Well, for a feature film,
right,
you're talking about 200, 300, probably upwards of 200 or 300 people. So that's in conversation that you're having with effectively, or communicating that message, and it just depends on how. There is a whole logistical process to be able to do Kickstarter crowdfunding.
Yeah, it seems
I'm not knocking it.
No, sure. I've never tried. I'm not knocking it either. I've never tried it. Our budgets on Hell House 1 and 2. We're into, like, our production budget on 1 kind of ballooned a little bit, and my investors weren't happy about that, just because we had a lot of issues of post-production sound and the mixing, a lot of things you have to get right when you deliver to the platforms to make sure it are of some standards, on higher standards, not just me, editing. Like sound mixing is very important, but very costly. So there are things that raised our budget a little bit. Kim, I'm going to have to give you a vague. I never thought about it, and I don't know. I hope to be able to keep the third movie's budget right around where we're at for Hell House 1 and 2, and and just double down onto 3. I guess that would be a triple down, but it's, I don't know. It's just, I would love to tell the story, finish the story, and be able to. Because right now, Abaddon Hotel is a middle chapter,
right?
And so I would love to tell the third and final chapter with Lake of Fire, but it's just, we'll see, and that's exploring options and everything. We'll see. I don't know.
I'll be fascinated. Well, if you're invited to come back and talk to me about Hell House 3. If and when it happens, that would be very cool. In the meantime, where's the best people to find? Where's the best for people to get hold of the DVD, the director's cut?
This is hellhousellc.com is where you can get the DVD, and for updates on what we're doing with the Abaddon Hotel. Right, as of now, we're keeping everyone updated on our Hell House Facebook page. At some point, we'll have to move that to its own page. But right now, all Abaddon Hotel and Hell House news are all through Hell House Facebook for now. And then obviously the movies, you can get it Amazon. It's probably the most place people mostly get it through Amazon. So it's the place I always say go the most.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Stephen, thank you very much indeed.
I had so much fun. Thank you so much for having me on. This is great. Thank you for letting me go on and on about Hell House. Appreciate that.
Well, it's my pleasure. Next week, folks, I don't have a guest lined up yet. There will be a show as far as I'm aware, but watch out in the next couple of days. I'll be making an announcement as to who I'll be talking to or what or topic I'll be covering. So in the meantime, do go out and watch Hell House LLC. I really thoroughly recommend it. Okay, let's say goodbye. Cheerio.
Thanks, Vince. Thanks, Nicholas. Take care.
Goodbye. Cool. And I'm not going to hit